I'm Tracy Austin, your host of the People Strategy Podcast. This show provides interviews with organizational leaders and ongoing coaching experiences that highlight elevating people in organizations through a people strategy roadmap.
So it's just trial and error, knowing the right questions to ask. Sometimes someone will present themselves one way, and then when they come in, it's a different story.
Hi, I'm Tracy Austin and the host of the People Strategy Podcast, where we dive into the latest trends and best practices in talent management and organizational development. Join me as I chat with industry experts, HR leaders, and business innovators to uncover strategies that can elevate your people and your business. And this week, this is a paired episode. So we had chatted with Vera Quinn from Cydcor last week. And so grateful whenever we can do these paired episodes. So I just want to thank Vera and Gail and the team at Cydcor for playing with us on the podcast here. So our guest today is Marliz Briano, and Marliz is the operations manager at Cydcor, and she's grown up inside of the organization. So it's always fun when we can hear what are those people strategies that really support growth for folks. And of course, we are so grateful for those that have supported us along the way, including you, our listeners, with our 5-star ratings and sharing this with your team and your colleagues. Thank you so much for listening in and gaining some of those insights, and more importantly than anything, implementing them in your organization to impact the people, to have some great experiences at work. This episode is brought to you by Elevated Talent Consulting's Leadership Development Program. And if you are interested in that, that is in our show notes as well. So with that, Marliz, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I am so curious. Tell us a little bit about your leadership journey and what led you to the operations manager role.
Absolutely. So first off, I started at Cydcor around 6 years ago. When I first started, I was on the compliance team, and that team is responsible for onboarding all the agents and making sure the reps are compliant. And from there, I actually merged with the service desk team. So our compliance team and service desk team became one. And what really motivated me to continue growing is just my own curiosity. So I wanted to learn everything there is to know about this company because I didn't know what it was until I started working here. So honestly, it just took a lot of baby steps. So leading my first team meeting were some of the things that, kind of led me to where I am today. My manager actually created a safe environment for me by allowing me to take on bigger projects as I was growing to make sure that I was, number one, learning and accountable for those results. And then just having a student mentality, just asking a lot of questions. One time I told my manager, I probably ask you more questions than anyone else in the team, right? And then she said, yeah, but that's good because that's how you learn. And just having different mentorship opportunities. What's great is there's a difference between having a mentor assigned to you and actually signing up for a mentor. So that's what we got to do here at Cydcor. We had the opportunity to apply. And if you want a mentor, they would actually look at the applications and select you. And you actually got paired up with the mentor, which is something that really helped me grow here too.
So little bit about this curiosity, because that curiosity, so often when we see new folks, folks at the line level, if they're not curious, a lot of times it's really hard to be coachable within that. So you innately had this curiosity. So tell me a little bit about not only the questions, but what impact did that have?
Absolutely. Because we're such a service-centered role, it was really important to be curious because there's a difference between giving everyone the answer, here's what it is, and also looking into it. Hey, how can I prevent it in the future? How does the system work? How does what we do impact other people and other departments? So that curiosity is what led me to grow because asking those questions helped me understand how everything works. There's just so many moving parts. There's different departments, there's different clients. So asking the right questions is the key to getting, to where you want to go.
Absolutely. And you just said something I think really interesting. You said asking the right questions is the key. Now, were your questions always the right questions, or did they get you to the right questions?
They actually got me the right questions. A lot of the times I didn't know where to start. So just asking, hey, who would I even go to for this? Yes. Where should I even start? Those are the good questions that I started with. And then I started, see patterns and then get to know other departments to know exactly where to go.
Phenomenal. Now, you had mentioned the mentor program, and with the mentor program, the way that it's set up at Cydcor as a people strategy is we're not going to assign you a mentor. We want you to be interested to show the initiative, which then shows that you're coachable, right? So tell us a little bit more about the mentor program.
Sure. I remember there was 12 spots available. So you had to fill out an application. Why did you want to mentor? What your growth plan was, any questions you had really. And then they would pair you up. If you were selected, they actually paired you up with someone that had the skills that you were looking to grow. And also someone that they thought wasn't like directly in your department, someone outside your department. So you could also build that relationship, not within where you already are.
Amazing. And for our listeners, our HR managers and leaders listening in, really think about that. That application process showed that those folks were incredibly interested in that. And the questions on the application also helps guide the mentor on what the mentee wants to know versus assuming what they need. So such keys to growth on both sides.
Absolutely.
And so as you grew through Cydcor, what had you very specifically continue to grow into a manager role and shift departments a little bit from where you were at? And you talked about the mergers briefly.
Yeah, I think seeing where I started to where I was at that point and saying, hey, if I grew that much, look at how much more I have to learn. And that excited me because my level of curiosity is unmatched. Like, I want to know everything, whether it's under my responsibility or not, because the more I know, the better. And that kind of helps other departments too, because they might not know what it is that we do. So having that explanation and telling them, hey, this is how what we do affects you, it kind of, connects those dots. And it makes me feel, I just want to be like eager to do well. And I'm not complacent. So wherever I am, I want to grow. I want to get to the next level up, because if you keep doing the same things over and over, that's the results you're going to get. You're going to be in the same spot. So if you want to grow, you have to get uncomfortable and learn to kind of, sharpen your skills.
Absolutely. That point of growth is uncomfortable, right? Like you don't have the confidence to do something while you're growing. And so it's that step into it. So we talked a little bit about kind of the programs that were available and your own innate curiosity. And I'm really curious, how did the team and how the teams were put together through each of your roles impact your growth within the organization?
I think the team impacted me because they're really self-driven and they want to grow. It would be a different story if they're okay where they're at. They don't want to grow. They just want to do the same thing and just stay at the same place, but they don't. They're really driven. They're high performers. So that challenges me to be more strategic and lead them with confidence. And actually their feedback and their collaboration have helped me redefine my leadership approach, because since they challenge me, it keeps me on my toes to keep thinking of different ways to make things better and make sure that they're being developed.
That's incredible. Now, every now and then I'll get like a question that I hear our listeners asking. And one of those is, how are you hiring these high performing folks that want to be at work? Because that's such a key question that I know several of our listeners have. So I'm curious, now that you're a hiring manager, how are you doing that?
It's trial and error, honestly. I remember when I first started and I hired my first person, thinking everything was going to be great. We were going to be friends and, it was just no issues. And that's not what happened. So it's just trial and error, knowing the right questions to ask. Sometimes someone will present themselves one way, and then when they come in, it's a different story. And then you have the opposite, where it's not that great of an interview, but then they turn out to be really great at, what they do. So for me, it was like a mix of both, getting to know like what the things, it's kind of hard to describe, especially when you're interviewing someone, because it's a feeling of, I got to have them. Sometimes it may not just be the answers that they give, but it's also their personality and how they present themselves. But yeah, I think those are the things that have helped me so far.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talked a little bit about, what questions to ask. I'm curious, what are some of those key questions that you ask in an interview that are super helpful to you?
Yeah. So what I do is, first of all, I just based it off the job description. I look at those, what are the key things that I'm looking for, and then I ask them what their day to day kind of looks like. They don't necessarily have to have the same role, because honestly, there's no other role that's kind of, exactly like this one. But just getting to the core, like, what are you interested in? What are you like outside of work? What's your personality like? And then that would tell me if they're a good culture fit for my team, because my team's fun. They like to go out, they're just a really like tight knit group. And I feel like someone who wants to work here has to be outgoing. They need to, want to be here, because just coming in and leaving is not like what we're about here.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you mentioned something really interesting, which was culture. So you're hiring for culture, you're hiring for fit to role very specifically. We call it the briefcase, which is, do you have transferable experience, knowing that there's a growth curve into the role? The team alignment, when you come onto the team, are you going to turn up the strengths of other folks on our team versus play whack-a-mole on the weaknesses?
Yes.
And then that personality, we use predictive index with all of our clients. And I don't know if you use anything or not, but those are so helpful to say, hey, are we hiring folks based on their natural fit versus just what shows up in the interview? And I love those questions you asked.
Yeah. Thank you.
And so, as we talk about, team as well, there's different teams and organizations. We have the team that you're leading, but then also you're a part of that management team. There's project teams, etc. So tell me a little bit about the impact of the different teams and how that contribution back and forth really elevates everyone.
Sure. For myself, I learn from everyone. I learn from my direct reports, I learn from other managers, and I learn from the directors. So I'm just a sponge. I learn from my friends, from the team. I like, when they first start, I like to sit with them and kind of show them what the role is and train them. During that time, I really get to know them. I get to know what their strengths are. I get to know what their weaknesses are, and I really get to know who they are as a person. And for my managers, my peers, what I do is, whenever there is an issue, because sometimes things happen that you're not expecting, like a lot of the time things happen that way. So, yes. So, what I do is I go to other managers and I kind of get their advice. Like, hey, have you ever experienced this before? This is what I'm seeing. What advice do you have for me? And then just collectively getting all the answers that they have, I just pick and choose, hey, this is what fits best for my team. And I kind of implement those ideas that they give me. So it's like a more of a collaborative environment instead of me just trying to figure it out on my own.
Absolutely. And there's something you just said that I want to highlight. And it's an and both approach. And that is, I'm going to get the feedback from my peers that have more experience than what I have. And I'm going to take into account what I know my team specifically needs. And I'm going to take into account my leadership. And I'm not going to do something just because someone else is doing it. I am going to look at, who am I authentically and how I lead with my team. I'm going to take their expertise, but it doesn't mean I have to mimic or be them.
Yes, exactly.
And I want to highlight that. It was a big part of the conversation last week with Vera. So if you haven't listened to that yet, please go back and take a listen to that. And for our leaders, you don't need to be someone else, right? It's authentically being you in your leadership. So tell us a little bit about how you've done that and how that has been essentially mentored or shown as an example for you.
Sure. I remember, what I do is I take what I've learned from other managers. So I remember learning from them. I remember what they did that I liked, and I remember what they did that I wasn't so much of a fan of. So I implement both, actually. So for example, if they make a mistake, I make it okay. 'Cause I remember it being okay for me. When I would make a mistake, nobody would reprimand me. Hey, let's talk about it. What did you learn from it? And let's go from there. And then making it safe for them, because that allows them to come to me when they do need help and not try to figure things out on their own or make bigger issues. So that's really helped me, because I know that the team feels safe with me, and I have created that environment by building trust and just spending that time with them to make sure that they get to know who I am. And likewise, I get to know who they are.
And that I'm going to know them personally and not just what they can produce.
Yes, exactly.
Such a great takeaway. And so you've transitioned a couple different times from doer to leader. And so often we find that that's a really tough transition to make because you can do it better than anyone else, right? And yet we can't grow unless we learn a new skill set, which, as we talked about earlier, can be challenging. There's some pain in that. So tell us a little bit about, that transition from doer to leader for you, both, what was painful, but what also kind of were some of those things that you took in that you said, okay, I think I got it now.
Yeah, I think it's exactly what you said, that there's like a pain right there where when you do transition from doer to leader, you have to let go. If you are doing things for them, giving them the answers and not allowing them to critically think, then that's exactly what they're going to keep doing. Come ask you whenever they need help and not know how to fend for themselves. So I had to learn to trust my team to execute while I was focusing on the bigger picture, because I can't do both. I can't do their job and mine. So I need to trust that they're going to learn. And of course, they're going to make mistakes. Like I said, making it safe for them to make those mistakes and then they'll learn from them is a bigger lesson than me just giving them the answer. So I learned to ask why questions when they would come to me with, hey, how do I do this? What do you think? Where do you think we can go? What do you think the answer should be? And then having them think about it, because then that's like a trained mental response for when they do have other questions come up, to not come to me first. Let's think of what the answer can be, and you can come to me for validation or.
Yeah, I love this approach, right? Because it pulls you out of being the bottleneck. And it goes back to the curiosity of, I'm going to train my team to be curious when they come to me with questions. Otherwise, it all ends up on your shoulders.
Exactly.
Amazing. And so one of the things that Vera had shared last week, and it's very apparent on your website when we look at the Cydcor website, is, the vision. So tell me a little bit about how the vision that is shared with a team has an impact on your engagement at work.
Sure. I think what Vera does is she doesn't just talk about the vision, we live it. So what I feel is really impactful for us is one of the examples of something that she does is during our company meetings. We have a meeting once a month where everyone joins, remote team members, everyone. And what she does is we talk about, one of the things is the behaviors we value, which is our core values here at Cydcor. And she'll describe one of them. Every month we'll have a new one. She'll have someone read it. And then before the meeting ends, she'll talk about someone who actually exemplifies it and why for that month. So our peers will nominate us and they'll send that into her. She'll read one. And then from there, before the meeting ends, she'll have us all write in the chat someone who we work with who exemplifies that. So that not only does that reinforce the message, but it also shows you what great looks like. So, hey, that's where I want to be. What are things that they're doing that I can do to get to that point?
And I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you have an example?
You know what? I'm going to give you the most famous example. There was sales quality specialist. They're in charge of any concerns that come in related to clients and customers. So there was one person, her name is Emma, and she actually had a sales quality concern for someone who was actually working on an oil rig. So oil rigs, they don't really have phones readily accessible. So what she did is she made it a point to help this customer, and she did everything in her power to get a hold of him on the phone, because there's only certain hours they can use the phone and so on and so forth. Finally, she was able to get in contact with him because his wife actually didn't speak English and she was a decision maker. So she had to speak to him personally. After a month of back and forth, she was able to get them everything that they needed. Super happy. He actually wrote in a letter to Vera himself and just said, thank you so much for her going above and beyond. And that's just an example of one of the behaviors we value, which is service to our clients. So that she went so far as to help someone who wasn't even part of one of our concerns. This was something unrelated to what we work with. And she just made it a point to help him and make him feel good about our service here at Cydcor.
That's incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that example and making that tangible for our listeners.
Yeah.
And so I have two questions that I love to ask all of our guests. And so the first one is, what is a work bucket list item that you have for 2025?
One thing that will always be something that we can work on is automation. So making sure that what we're doing is as efficient as possible. So if there's processes that are taking up a lot of our time, manual things that, we could automate, that's something that's always going to be at the forefront. So that's one of my bucket list items, is just to continue driving for those improvements and then just creating really significant efficiencies. And then the second would be to strengthen my leadership presence and influence at the company level, continuing to help my team grow, other managers, anyone who needs help, really.
Absolutely. And something I just so see in our conversations is the authenticity and the humbleness of this service space. It really comes through with you, Marliz. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
What is a personal bucket list that you have for yourself this year?
I actually, last week, I was at Disney World, and at Disney World, they have Epcot, which has different countries you can visit. So being inside at each of those areas showed me that there's so much out there. So sometimes I get stuck in, going to work, going to sleep, going to work, going to sleep, the routine. So just remembering to kind of disconnect and taking time to visit other countries or, learn about other cultures, foods. So that's one of my bucket lists for this year, is to travel more.
That's incredible. That is incredible. I got back last week from Hawaii, and that was state 49 for me. So
oh my God, I love it.
Fun. Yeah. So it's like those bucket list items, and there's such a power of naming them out loud. And now everybody hears what that is, right? But especially with your team, because when we can name what those bucket list items are at work and personally, one, is there a way to connect those two things together? It sounds like the next team meeting may be a different authentic restaurant that you haven't been to yet.
Yes.
But there's a ability with it to make those things happen. So thank you so much for sharing that with us and your leadership journey. Is there any kind of last nugget or challenge that you have for our listeners as they're creating people strategies in their organizations to develop leaders?
Yes. I actually read that one thing that you have to do is be comfortable with being uncomfortable. So I really love that, because growth comes from stepping outside of your comfort zone. And that's the biggest thing that's helped me. Not everything that I said yes to was I comfortable with doing, but you know what? Public speaking, you get better at it if you practice more. So those are just little things that, one of the biggest things is just getting comfortable with being uncomfortable.
And this is your first podcast interview.
Yes.
And you did an amazing job.
Oh. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for being with us on this episode of the People Strategy Podcast. If you are interested in learning more about Cydcor or Marliz and Vera, please see the links in our show notes. And we look forward to seeing you in our leadership development program and next week on the show. Have a great week.
Thank you so much for listening today. I'd love to connect with you. If you'd like to connect, you can find me on LinkedIn at Tracy, Traci Austin, and at our website at elevatedtalentconsulting.com. If you'd love to learn more about our process, please reach out to us. And again, thank you so much for listening and sharing your feedback with us through a review. Have a fantastic day.